Framed, the trial of Ethan Cole. Ethan Cole never thought his life would flip upside down in a heartbeat. At 17 years old, he was a straight-A student, captain of the debate team, and had dreams of becoming a civil rights attorney. His evenings were usually spent buried in case law books at the downtown library in Baltimore. His mother, Dana Cole, worked long hours as a nurse at Mercy Hospital, while his father, well, Ethan didn't talk about his father much. He wanted to earn success on his own merit, not because of his last name. That night started like any other. The streets were quiet, the air cool as Ethan walked home, his backpack heavy with textbooks. Streetlights cast soft halos on the sidewalk as he passed. He was lost in thought, reciting sections of constitutional law in his head when a sudden burst of sirens jolted him back to reality. Red and blue lights flared in his peripheral vision as a police cruiser screeched to a halt beside him. "Hands where I can see them," a voice barked. Ethan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. Another officer flung open the passenger door, gun drawn. On the ground. Now. Confused and terrified, Ethan raised his hands. Wait. What's going on? I didn't." Before he could finish, the first officer rushed forward and tackled him to the cold pavement, shoving a knee into his back. He heard the metallic click of handcuffs tightening around his wrists. "We've got a positive ID," the officer muttered. "Armed robbery. You're under arrest." "Robbery?" Ethan gasped. No. I was just at the library. Check the cameras. Please." But they weren't listening. They hauled him to his feet and shoved him into the back of the cruiser. The door slammed shut behind him with a heavy finality that sent a deep chill down his spine. As they drove off, Ethan could see a small crowd gathering, neighbors whispering, shaking their heads. Some of them knew him, knew he wasn't a criminal. But it didn't matter now. The holding cell was a freezing metal box that hummed with the buzz of flickering fluorescent lights. Ethan sat on the bench, wrists red and raw from the handcuffs. The sour stench of old sweat and fear clung to the walls. He fought to stay calm, but his mind raced. How did this happen? Just an hour ago, he had been studying Supreme Court rulings, dreaming of a scholarship to Georgetown. Now he was a suspect in an armed robbery. "Cole, let's go," an officer barked. Ethan stood on shaky legs as they escorted him to the courtroom. Every step down the hallway felt surreal, like sleepwalking through someone else's nightmare. Inside the courtroom, strangers filled the gallery, reporters, onlookers. But his eyes went straight to his mother. Dana sat in the front row, her red eyes locked on him, her hands clinging to her purse strap as if it was the only thing holding her together. At the bench sat Judge Margaret Pennington. Ethan knew the name. She had a reputation for being ruthless, especially toward young black men. Zero tolerance, zero leniency. "State your name for the record," she said without looking up. Ethan cleared his throat. "Ethan Cole, Your Honor." The prosecutor, Alan Mercer, stood up smoothly. "Your Honor, the defendant has been positively identified as the perpetrator of an armed robbery that occurred at 9:15 p.m. this evening. We request he be held without bail." Ethan's stomach twisted into knots. "What eyewitness?" "I wasn't even there." His public defender, a thin man named Victor Tran, stood. "Your Honor, my client insists he was at the city library at the time of the incident. We request time to secure footage confirming his alibi." Pennington finally looked up. Her gaze was cold. "The evidence against him is strong. Hearing set for 1 week from today." 1 week? Ethan's pulse pounded. But the gavel slammed down. "Remanded into custody," she said flatly. Dana leapt to her feet. "Wait. No. He's innocent," she cried out. The bailiffs moved to restrain her as Ethan turned to Victor. "Do something. Please." Victor whispered, "I'll try," but his eyes told Ethan the truth. There was little he could do. As the officers dragged Ethan away, his mother's desperate cries echoed behind him. Jail was worse than anything Ethan had imagined. He had read about wrongful convictions, watched documentaries about injustice. None of that prepared him for the reality, the cold, the noise, the feeling of being stripped of your identity. He sat on the edge of his bunk, his mind replaying the hearing over and over. Judge Pennington's cold stare. Mercer's smug grin. His mother's sobs. It didn't matter that he was innocent. Not here. The cell door clanked open. "Phone call," the guard grunted. Ethan's heart jumped. He scrambled up and followed the guard to the payphones. When he picked up the receiver, he heard the steady, measured voice he hadn't heard in months. "Ethan." "Dad," he whispered. There was a pause, then Julian Cole spoke. "Listen carefully. I'm already working on this." "They say there's an eyewitness," Ethan said, voice cracking. "But I was at the library. The cameras. I know, Julian interrupted. Your mother told me. We're digging. We'll find the truth. Ethan's heart pounded. They're not listening. Barbara Pennington, Julian said with a sigh. She's been handing out max sentences like candy, especially when there's a political angle. What do you mean? Julian was silent for a beat. Your arrest isn't just about you. This might be about me. Ethan's gut clenched. Julian was the U.S. Attorney General. He had exposed corruption from coast to coast, crooked cops, dirty judges, prosecutors who twisted justice for personal gain. This was revenge. I'll get you out, Julian said. But it'll take time. How much time? Ethan asked. I don't know, Julian admitted. But I'm not stopping until you're free. The guard tapped his wrist. Time was up. I believe you, Ethan said, gripping the phone tightly before hanging up. The days that followed blurred into one long stretch of gray walls and hopelessness. Meals were cold. Sleep was fitful. Ethan kept his head down. But he was no longer just scared. Now he was angry. Someone was framing him, destroying evidence. They wanted to bury him. But why? Because of his father? Because Julian Cole had made enemies in high places? Then came the visit. You've got a visitor, the guard said. Dana was waiting behind the glass partition. She looked tired, worn thin by worry. Ethan grabbed the phone. Mom. Baby, she whispered, pressing her hand to the glass. Are you okay? I'm holding on. Your dad found something, she said. The eyewitness? The kid who said he saw you? He was pressured. What? They convinced him to ID you. He wasn't sure. In the library footage, it was wiped. Accidentally. Same night. A cold dread spread through Ethan's chest. They're setting me up, he said. Dana nodded, tears glistening. But your father's not giving up. Neither am I. You hear me? The guard signaled. Time was up. Dana's voice was urgent. Stay strong. You are not alone. I love you, Ethan said, pressing his palm to the glass. I love you too, Dana replied, her voice breaking. Later that night, sitting on his bunk, Ethan let the anger burn. They wanted him to break. They wanted him to take a plea deal and disappear. But he wouldn't give them that satisfaction. The next day, something unexpected happened. Cole, a guard barked. Move. He was taken to an interrogation room. Waiting for him was Alan Mercer. Have a seat, Mercer said. Ethan stood still. I'm not saying anything. You don't have to talk. Just listen. Mercer leaned forward. Your father has made powerful enemies. And there are consequences. Take the deal. 5 years. You'll get out early. And if I don't? Mercer's expression darkened. You'll never leave prison. Ethan stared back. I'm not admitting to something I didn't do. Mercer's jaw tightened. You'll regret it. The following day, another visitor. Judge Pennington herself. You should have taken the deal, she said calmly through the glass. I'm innocent, Ethan replied. The system isn't built for people like you to win, she said coldly. This is your last chance. Take the deal. No, Ethan said firmly. Pennington's eyes flashed with disappointment. Then you'll learn the hard way. But they underestimated him. The next morning, Ethan was called to court early. Something had changed. As he entered the courtroom, his eyes found his parents. Dana looked ready to collapse. Julian, however, was calm, controlled. Judge Pennington called the hearing to order. New developments, she announced. Mercer frowned. I wasn't informed. You're informed now, she snapped. Julian Cole stood. Your Honor, we have recovered the library footage. My son was there during the time of the robbery. Gasps filled the room. Julian wasn't finished. The eyewitness was coerced. And, he said slowly, we have uncovered evidence of prosecutorial misconduct and collusion between Mr. Mercer and Judge Pennington. Chaos erupted. This is outrageous. Mercer barked. The evidence is with the Attorney General's office, Julian replied smoothly. Pennington's face drained of color. After a long pause, she cleared her throat. Given these revelations, this case is dismissed pending investigation. The chains came off Ethan's wrists. His mother wept. His father's gaze never wavered. Outside, reporters swarmed them. How does it feel to be free? They shouted. Julian raised a hand. There will be a full federal investigation. We will hold those responsible accountable. Ethan didn't speak. Not yet. In the weeks that followed, more cases unraveled. Innocent men and women came forward. Ethan couldn't walk away. He couldn't forget what happened. One evening, he sat with his father. Documents covered the table. You don't have to do this, Julian said. I do, Ethan replied. Years later, Ethan Cole would stand in courtrooms not as a victim, but as an advocate, a defender. a fighter for justice, because they tried to bury him. And instead, they planted something stronger. This isn't just one boy's story. It's a reminder that the fight for justice never ends. And there will always be people, like Ethan Cole, who refuse to be silenced.